So, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah. So, we're here to talk about the Black Manifesto and that year, 1969, when so many things are happening in our country. Who would you say you were in May of 1969 in one sentence?
Uh, a very busy mom, uh, following up on the admonition of the people I left at home
Mm.
uh, to get myself to church.
Oh.
And so I found Riverside and discovered that it was the church that my father had been listening to on the radio, and he was very fond of Dr. Fosdick.
Mm.
I was so surprised to just happen on this church.
That's beautiful. Were you in the neighborhood? Did you live in the
I
neighborhood of the
did.
Riverside Church? Okay.
I lived in the neighborhood, and at the time I was attending Teachers College.
Mm. So, attending Teachers College with three young children, you happened upon the Riverside Church in the city of New York.
Actually, yes, I had found the church around 1962, and but which was some distance, sometime before the big event here with Mr. Forman. Um, um, yes, and I had a full-time job.
Wow, you were a little busy.
Yes, I
A
was.
little
Yeah.
busy. So you were here that day when James Forman interrupted worship on May 4th
Yeah.
and stood on those steps over there on the chancel of the Riverside Church
Yes.
and recited his Black Manifesto. Can you sort of walk us through what that Sunday was like for you? I think you said you came late that day.
Yes, I did. And of course, um, I didn't know a lot of people here. I sat there being quiet and respectful when I saw this young man making pronouncements from the steps, somewhere along the steps.
Mm-hmm.
And he was very loud. It sounded strident.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and he was speaking rapidly.
Ah.
Um, then I noticed people standing and gasping and craning back here, looking around to see what was going on. I was totally surprised. I had no inkling that anything like this was afoot here at the church on that Sunday. I was just trying to be a good churchgoer. And I think even I was thinking, what is this? Why would someone interrupt a church service?
Stop. It is not my intention to interrupt this service. It is not my intention. We, the black people assembled in Detroit, Michigan for the National Black Economic Development Conference, are fully aware that we have been forced to come together because racist white America has exploited our resources, our minds, our bodies, our labor. For centuries, we have been forced to live as colonized people inside the United States, victimized by the most vicious racist system in the world. We have helped to build the most industrial country in the world.
Much later, I understood the importance of it. So then, he seemed to get drowned out. Couldn't hear very much. He seemed to be blaming or accusing the church, not Riverside in particular, but the churches in general and other religious institutions for the problems that black people were having in this country. And it related to a legacy of slavery. I understood that much. but then, you know, you get distracted because people all around you are whispering and talking. And there was a tall young man who sat behind me.
Mm.
And that's the one person that I heard loud and clear. He said, "This might work if I could manage to make do with less."
Mm. That's
He
powerful.
said that. He said that. And I learned later that he was someone affiliated with the New York School of Theology.
Maybe New York Theological
New York Theological Seminary. Yes,
Oh.
that was. He even then I think he had a position there. But I didn't know it at the time because I've seen him here at the church since. He was a Riverside regular. A very, I thought, very nice and learned man. He might have even preached here.
Okay.
I wasn't here every Sunday. And then there was someone that I knew to be on the New York City, in the New York City government. His wife, when I joined this church in 1964, his wife was a beautiful religious family here, well, at least well-attending family. He had two young girls who came to this church with them. He was on the city planning board, making decisions even then for what's happening here in this area. I think his last name was, oh gosh, I forgot. I'll think of his name. But he stood up and walked out on that side over there. And he seemed so upset. He just couldn't stomach, apparently, that.
But the young man from New York Theological Seminary who said, "I think I could do that."
Yes, he said, "I think this would work. If meaning people like me could make do with less."
And by that he meant contribute to the reparations
Right.
that Forman was
He
demanding.
understood right away what Forman was talking about. And I was trying to grasp it. I had known the name for Forman from my, from the news and SNCC and all those things that I knew about. And I was at Teachers College when people marched into Grace Chapel and did a little demonstration, upset everybody.
Yeah, so could you hear what Forman was saying? Because you were sitting a bit further back than we are now. Or were you just hearing sounds but couldn't really make out?
I was hearing words. Certain words popped out.
Okay.
Words like church and legacy of slavery and something like, I thought he was saying 5,000, but I think it was 500,000 that he was talking about. But then things got to be very excited because then the pastor, Dr. Campbell, who was a wonderful speaker, he was good, started walking out. And people in droves followed him. The choir followed him.
So how long did it take? Were people stunned and Mr. Forman was able to speak for quite a while, or was it just a matter of minutes before people started to exit?
I think he began to speak, and people listened for a short while, a very short while, I guess just minutes. And seems Dr. Campbell stood and apologized or explained that something unexpected was happening at this moment, and that, but But Foreman kept talking. He was dead serious and intent on getting his message out. And I'm sure he knew there wouldn't be a lot of opportunities like that.
Okay.
And he did. And I do think he had an impact. Of course he did. Because now there are books and articles and stuff written about it.
Right, and we're still talking about it
Yeah,
55 years later.
And his son was here a few years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I met him and spoke to him about his dad.
Mm-hmm.
He looks a lot like his father.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He does. So Forman is wrapping up. Reverend Campbell is apologizing. What happens next?
People just walked out,
Okay.
grumbling
Uh-huh.
and trying to, I guess, being exasperated for the most part for what they had just seen and thinking this is not the proper way to do things. I wondered, though, if they would have sat and listened to any other method, any other presentation of this material.
I was going to ask, would there have been an avenue for him if he had tried to do it through the proper channels?
I seriously doubt that at that time. 1969, there had been all those assassinations.
Yes.
And still the crimes had not been solved.
Mm-hmm.
At least the assassination of Dr. King had not been solved. And we wondered if it ever would be solved.
Did you join the walkout? Were you a part of it?
No, I just sat there. I think, truly I was amazed. Because I'm thinking this young man has a lot of courage.
Mm.
He couldn't have felt safe, not even here.
Mm. Mm. Say more about that. Why do you think he may have felt unsafe? Was it the congregation or?
I think he might have thought that it's a church and Riverside was the church of Dr. Fosdick, and there were very few black people here.
Mm.
I saw a few black people here, but I didn't see anyone that I knew. I think he thought he'd just just get there, get it done, and come what may.
Mm-hmm. And come what may.
He was committed, and progress was so slow in the 60s. And the work of the groups working on social justice was being rebuffed,
Here in Riverside Church.
Nationally, because
yes.
there were all those horrible things that happened in Chicago with the people trying to provide meals and stuff for poor people. Here was this wealthy, great endowed church. Mm-hmm. And I thought maybe he thought because this congregation was so beautifully endowed, this one of all churches would listen. Mm. And not at that time.
Right. And I wonder, when you say this seemed like a church that would listen, because Riverside had that commitment to justice even way back then, but also had this huge endowment. And we sort of perhaps saw those things kind of come together and clash in that moment when Mr. Forman got up and said what he said.
Yes.
Yeah. So what happened after? You stayed, But what happened the rest of the day? Did people
Yeah,
hang around and talk about it? Were people on the phone later that night?
yeah. I left and walked out on. I lived nearby, and I passed people on the street.
Mm.
I knew the people between the church, that is east of Broadway there,
Mm-hmm.
and they apparently had been listening, or they saw people leaving, and there was all this gab about the church. So one of the guys at the garage wanted to know what happened at Riverside this morning.
Because church ended early, or did this happen at the end of worship?
It was the church ended early.
Oh.
Yeah. And I think it was Communion Sunday.
Mm. So you had communion, or you didn't have
I
communion?
didn't.
Oh, wow. So people were probably really shook.
Yeah, I'm thinking, whoa, this is really heavy duty. So, yeah, the guys at the garage were aware that something had occurred here and they wanted to know what it was. And I told them I wasn't sure what it was,
Mm-hmm.
but someone had tried to make a speech, and apparently the congregation did not want to hear it. And but those were the only people. I didn't stand long talking to them about it.
And in the weeks to come, what happened after that? Did people continue to talk about it the next week and the week after that?
Yes, I think Dr. Campbell brought it up.
Mm.
Yeah. He didn't seem to be as disturbed afterwards as he was that Sunday. I think we were all stunned, and surely he must have been. I don't know if he had been aware that Forman would be here. I don't know if he was invited. I don't know if he had requested the opportunity to speak to the congregation or any of that. In hindsight, it appears he had not requested that. I'm not sure though. Because of the way he just sort of went up there and started talking.
Right, right. What do you think about that? Because I think it's Dr. King who says something about how the dispossessed have to sort of seize their moment.
Yes.
When there's no voice, you have to seize the moment.
Yes.
So what did you think about James Forman's tactic?
Well, then I was a lot less forthright than I am now. And I think I probably would have said, do this, go through proper channels, mm-hmm. and make your voice heard.
Mm-hmm. What would you say now?
I would say if he had gone through proper channels, his voice would not have been heard.
Would not have been heard, right. So you feel like you would have supported him. Now you think you're in a place where you may have supported his action.
I think so.
Yeah.
With regret that that is what is required sometimes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the incident was important because I think lots of people began a new way of thinking about things. So even if his methods, neither method nor message were respected, gains were made.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. And I think similar to Dr. King, right? Also not respected or regarded in the moment, but now has a national holiday named after him. And so you said that it changed some people's perspectives. How would you say the event changed Riverside Church?
Woo! It did. Because Riverside began thinking about uh, the distance between wealth and privilege and those without, those even with nothing. So began thinking about ways to be more inclusive and um, to be better, to be caring people for all people.
Caring people for all people. That's so beautiful.
And one of the reasons I joined this church was because of its emphasis on justice. Because, I came from the South, and we didn't go into any church that identified as a white church. I don't know if I can now. I'm not sure. Not the one in my hometown.
Right. And it's a little heartbreaking now, right?
Yeah.
55 years later.
Oh, yeah. But it's okay because the church I attended was so foundational. I have such love and respect for the people who nurtured me, in faith and behavior. Oh, they were so close. Expectations. And so often I feel that I have not fulfilled, I have not lived up to their expectations of me. So, but I do what I can. And so, yeah, I think Riverside decided to get on board. In fact, based on Dr. Fosdick, to be at the vanguard for liberalism and in consideration of other than the rich. Because at the time, there were so many mink and fox furs and jewels in this church, you would not believe it. Oh my goodness. My little black wool coat got stared at.
Wow.
I wasn't about to go out and spend the food money on the animals covering.
So May 4th, 1969, James Forman comes to the Riverside Church in the city of New York and attempts to deliver his Black Manifesto.
Yes.
How would you say that event continues to have repercussions in the church today? How is that legacy still impacting Riverside Church today?
Yes. Well, here we are these days talking about reparations. Labor forced out of people for lives destroyed in the service from which others benefited to the greatest extent without compensation of any kind. In fact, no rewards except to be disregarded, never enjoyed the fruits of their labor. In fact, oh gosh, I think so often about how proud I am of the strength of those people. Modern day people are nothing compared to them. My grandfather, my goodness. I think Oh, well, maybe I'm getting off track.
No, please.
My grandfather, I think the most beloved person, my heart, because he was so intelligent. I hear he might have finished the 3rd grade, but there was nothing he couldn't do. They were about learning, and they were about learning, and they were about sharing what they had with their neighbors. It's the way we survived in my little community. He was a farmer, and that is why I have the soul of a farmer. I am a farmer in my soul. um, he didn't have male grandsons nearby until they were teenagers. So I was his little farmer grandchild.
Mm-hmm.
And he taught me so much about nature and love. You know, so, and about him. But anyway,
So I think when James Forman got up and made that call from wealthy white churches and synagogues, he was making that call on behalf of people like your grandfather.
yeah,
Yeah.
he uh, he shared what he had, you know. Yeah, whatever they had, they shared with their neighbors, and that was the way of life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure he would not understand how it might not have been that way otherwise, because, and he didn't depend on other people to provide for you what you needed. If you needed something, you figured out a way to get it done. I think that's where that intelligence came from.
Mm-hmm.
You had to use God's gifts to survive.
We call that mother wit. My mom called it mother wit.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us about that day? Or sense that has been impacted or influenced by that day?
Yeah. That day was, I'm thinking, here's somebody we need to know more about, hear more from. And I was really disappointed when he went quiet. For a long time, we heard nothing from James Forman. And I wondered what had happened to him, because my father was surely in line with the way that man was speaking. They called my dad a radical, because he was his heroes were Paul Robeson and Thurgood Marshall. Yeah, he liked them a lot. And so my dad talked to me all the time about, he talked about Fosdick. But I don't remember what he said about Fosdick, except that he admired it. So, yeah, I think Riverside started moving more deftly toward being different. And then there came Dr. Forbes.
Mm-hmm.
I think the seminary union had a lot to do with the way Riverside moved.
Mm-hmm.
How can we call ourselves Christians and exclude God's people?
So Forman, it sounds like, invited the church to step into a river that the next senior ministers were able to help them continue to stay in.
It's definitely resonated with the thinking of so many people in religious leadership. Well, not all over the nation, but certainly right around here.
And I think to bring it back full circle, it was something that created a lot of tension, the Black Manifesto, in the moment when it happened. But I think it's something that Riverside has since come to be very grateful for, perhaps proud of, that we had that moment that pushed us to the places where we are now, talking about education, banned books, reparations.
Yes.
Yeah.
And allowed this man in. Yes. And I think maybe Forman was right. This was the place to do this. His message was not appreciated, but at least he got inside the door and he got out safely. And he has made an impact. I've spoken in my, for most of my long life at Riverside, I've been on the Mission and Social Justice Commission. When Elliot was the name of the man who walked out in anger. It just occurred to me. His wife was so gracious to me when I joined the church and invited me immediately to join the Education Commission, and I did. And then I was on the nominating committee and back on the education, and then joined the Mission and Social Justice Commission because I wanted to be in a group of like-minded people. So, and we worked hard on social justice. And there I often ask the question, I at least referenced the fact that people like my grandfather and his father and grandfather created circumstances from which people from around the globe have come to this country and prospered. What about us?
I think that's the question James Forman was asking from the steps of the Riverside Church.
Yes.
And you were here to see it.
Yes.
And you're still here to help us talk about it. So we're so grateful for that. I want to see if there's anything you want to say in closing as we wrap up.
Well, I am still grateful to be here because this is still the vanguard for the things that I care about. Justice, equity, compassion, art, creativity, the windows, the sermons, the beauty of the place. So I am grateful, and even as I am as old as I am, I will always work for ideals of justice and equity and compassion. I mean, this is home. I am at home, and this is where it's amazing. I was not always intentional about this. It seems there has been some movement that put me where this sensibility needed to be in service to something, to the people and to my faith.
And thanks to your
and
father.
I'm a believer.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, let me tell you. Yes.
And thanks to your father, you found your way to the Riverside Church. And we're so glad you did. And I'm so glad you made the time today to talk with us about the Black Manifesto.
Thank you.
Thank you for making the
Thank
time.
you.
So grateful for you sharing your story.
Yes, thank you.